Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me sufficiently? Those in the media, you've got sufficient sound? Great. My name is Dave Jones, and I have the privilege of serving as California's Insurance Commissioner, where I regulate the largest insurance market in the United States, where insurers collect over $300 billion a year in premium from families and businesses. One of the important aspects of that job is making sure that insurance companies fulfill the promises they make when they collect those premiums. Sadly, last year, a big part of the job also was and continues to be helping those that suffered the most extreme and devastating wildfire-related events in California's history. Today, we're here to talk about some important legislation that's pending before the Senate Insurance Committee, and I'm very pleased to be joined by Senator Bill Dodd and Senator Mike McGuire, who will talk a little bit later about their bills, and Mayor Chris Corsi from Santa Rosa, and fire survivors, people that firsthand suffered the ravages of the most devastating fires in California's history. At the conclusion of the formal remarks, the media will have an opportunity to talk individually to those fire survivors who are here. As I said a moment ago, this was the most disastrous set of fires in California's history. Took 69 lives, destroyed partially or completely some 36,000 structures, and to date has caused close to $13 billion in insured losses. The senators and I and other members of the legislature have come together to offer a series of bills that come directly out of the challenging experiences that fire survivors are having in getting their insurance proceeds. I've had a chance to meet personally with fire survivors in Northern and Southern California and hear firsthand their harrowing stories. And their challenges continue. These are people that have lost everything, in some cases lost the lives of loved ones, lost every prized possession, every memento, every memory they had. The bills are very simple. They're designed to make it easier for people that are at the worst moment of their lives to get what they've been promised and to make sure that they have a chance to recover. One bill, the bill by Senator Dodd, which he'll talk about in greater detail, allows consumers to combine the various coverages that they've already paid for so they can fully access all that they've paid for in order to rebuild their home. The second bill by Senator McGuire, also a critically important bill, deals with the issue of the very painful and arduous task that insurers require of individuals to document each and every piece of property they have before they're willing to pay out for contents coverage. These two bills will make a big difference for people that have suffered enormously. And I'm very, very pleased to have had a chance to partner with Senator McGuire and Senator Dodd on these important pieces of legislation. They have been extraordinarily dedicated, as has the mayor and others, in doing everything they can to help fire survivors with what is a very, very difficult and arduous task. Sadly, we're in a fight that we shouldn't be in. As we speak, insurance industry lobbyists are working the halls of this Capitol to try to stop these bills from passage. They're using their incredible influence and power to try to prevent these important consumer protection bills from being enacted. My hope is that the stories of the fire survivors and the impacts that these people have suffered, these Californians have suffered, and that all of us are at risk of suffering now because of the nature of wildfire in California. My hope is that the Senate Insurance Committee will not be persuaded by the insurance lobby, but instead will stand with the consumers of California and stand with Senator Dodd and Senator McGuire. With that, it's my pleasure now to introduce Senator Bill Dodd to talk in more detail about his important legislation.
Thank you very much. I'm really appreciative of the media coming today to hear about this important story. You know, representing communities that have been devastated by wildfires and hearing from so many of our neighbors who lost their homes to flames, I feel that this state of California has a moral imperative to act. We can't sit idly by and allow them to be victimized again by an uncaring insurance industry that's happy to sweep its shortcomings under the rug. We need to do everything we can to help victims of wildfires and other natural disasters recover. We also need to be proactive and ensure that reforms protect future disaster victims. Families pay their insurance premiums year in and year out And when a major disaster strikes, our insurance companies have to have our backs. That's why I've authored legislation to reform insurance coverage for residents across the state of California. My bill, SB 894, would guarantee up to 3 years coverage for living expenses. After major disasters, we know it takes a lot of time for victims to rebuild. The bill would also ensure that insurance companies provide victims with policy renewals for up to 2 years following a disaster. And it requires companies to report to the insurance commissioner if they non-renew or pull out of a market, so we can connect consumers with vital information and resources like the state's FAIR Plan. Lastly, my bill would allow people to combine coverage categories in the wake of declared disasters if the cost to rebuild exceeds their coverage. But they have unused coverage for accessory structures. They should have flexibility in that regard. There's more to helping victims and communities recover quickly and more completely after a disaster strikes. I'm proud to be working with Commissioner Jones and jointly authoring this bill with Senator McGuire, who's been a tremendous partner in fighting for our region. It is truly a team effort. I've also introduced SB 1291, which would ensure independent and have a minimum level of education and are fingerprinted. There are 35 states that license independent insurance adjusters, and California is only one, that exempts independent insurance adjuster employees from the fingerprint background checks and basic education requirements. The insurance commissioner in our office have heard from many wildfire victims who have dealt with independent insurance adjusters who didn't understand California law or even the policies or their own policies, and many were given inaccurate information. We think it's reasonable to ensure people acting as insurance adjusters actually have some modest training before interacting with people who've undergone one of the most traumatic events they can possibly endure, the loss of their home. I often hear the insurance industry say they want to do right by their customers. Well, let me tell you, it's time for them to step up and prove it rather than fighting these much-needed reforms which will help victims. Knowing that the fires and other natural disasters will happen again, we must act now to improve the insurance coverage and consumer protection throughout the state of California. It's my pleasure at this time to introduce another partner in this in this fight for consumers and our victims here in the state of California, a tireless worker, Senator Mike McGuire.
Good afternoon. I want to start out by saying thank you all for attending. I want to take a moment to acknowledge Senator Dodd for his incredible fight, his work over these past many, many months. I also want to say thank you to our insurance commissioner here, Mr. Jones. From day one, he has been on the ground, wanting to be able to assist those who need it most, those who lost their homes. Would like to be able to acknowledge Mr. Corsi, Mayor of City of Santa Rosa, who has been working 24/7 for the past 7 months to be able to assist those who are in need, and also acknowledge those who are with us today who lost their home and were impacted by the devastating North Bay Firestorm. That firestorm was the most destructive and deadly in modern American history. The level of destruction was truly unprecedented, with over 6,000 homes completely destroyed and 44 of our neighbors passing away. We as a state have never witnessed a fire season with such suffering. In 2017, a total of 30,000 structures were destroyed or damaged, totaling $12 billion. And experts believe there's more to come, as climate change is exacerbating the size and scope of wildland fire events here in the Golden State. Losing a home is one of the most devastating experiences a person could have in their life. The loss itself takes significant emotional toll. The thousands of residents, who lost their homes in last year's wildfires could not have imagined that they would soon be forced to relive that tragedy by producing an inventory of everything they lost. That's exactly what's happening right now, because every current insurance policy originally required residents to prepare an inventory showing in detail the quality, description, age, replacement costs, and amount of each loss. For higher value items, they are also required to attach an inventory to the bills, such as receipts and related documents that substantiate the figures in the inventory. For example, just to be able to submit a claim for a television, residents are required to document in which room the television was located, a description of the television, including the brand and the model number, the TV's age in years and months, its condition, and how much it costs to replace it without taxes. I will tell you, I would personally not be able to provide this type of information if I lost my home, and I think all of us here would be challenged to do the same. At the beginning of this year, January 1st to January 10th, my office alone received over 100 formal complaints and candidly horror stories of residents feeling gravely overwhelmed from what was being required by their insurance companies. We received calls from survivors literally experiencing PTSD, people having to relive the most horrific night of their lives and recall and attempt to put a price on their most priceless possessions. It's simply too much to ask, and it's the reason we all pay home insurance each month for what our homes and valuables are worth. So when tragedy strikes, we can do our best to be able to replace what we have lost. Fast forward to today, nearly 7 months after the North Bay Firestorm broke out. Here are the statistics about where we're at. 60% of North Bay homeowners have yet to settle their contents policy. 80% have not settled their structure. And those who have settled, the outlook is bleak. Nearly half of all homeowners are underinsured for their contents, and 60% are underinsured for their structure. These numbers are alarming because residents are also dealing with depreciated values with their settlements, skyrocketing construction costs, soaring rental markets, and even when settlements are made, they are uneven. SB 897, the bill that we're advancing with Senator Dodd and our insurance commissioner, would simply create the standards to expedite residential insurance claims after a governor-declared disaster and allow survivors to be able to rebuild their homes, but most importantly, rebuild their lives. We're fighting to pass 897, and it shouldn't be such a fight. We're facing stiff opposition from a powerful insurance lobby. This bill provides peace of mind to survivors of disasters and includes a requirement that they're offered no less than 80% of their contents policy without the burden of producing an inventory for what they paid to cover. I'm going to end it here. The insurance lobby is making all kinds of claims about how hard it would be for insurance companies to operate in California if these bills pass. But let's be honest. Long-term insurance companies will be fine. The tens of thousands of North Bay residents won't be. If we flash back to 2015 in Lake County with the Valley Fire, 1,282 homes were lost. Only 15% have been rebuilt as of April of 2018. We have a new normal in California, and while I hope this never strikes any other community, this kind of catastrophe can strike anywhere. We have to make sure that when disaster strikes, citizens are treated fairly and have what they need to be able to rebuild their life. It is now my pleasure to be able to introduce the mayor of the city of Santa Rosa, Mr. Chris Corsi.
Thank you, Senator McGuire. Last fall, 3,000 families in my city, the city of Santa Rosa, lost their homes. Since then, they've been struggling to rebuild their lives, to replace everything they own. They're dealing with all kinds of stresses and emotional upheavals. Unfortunately, insurance has added to that stress and to that struggle. What we've found in a survey done by United Policyholders, a nonprofit that advocates on behalf of insurance consumers, is that 80% of the people surveyed, that was a survey of 700 people, 97% of these are in Sonoma County, by the way. 80% have yet to settle any part of their insurance coverage. This has put a delay not only on their lives, but on the recovery of our entire community. We created a building and permits for people who want to rebuild their homes within 5 days. In the past 7 months, we've processed 100 permits. It's not because we can't do it, it's because they haven't settled their insurance claims yet. This is wrong. People who are involved. About 2/3 of the people in that survey said they plan to rebuild their homes. About 25% said they aren't sure. They aren't sure because they don't know if they're going to have the money to be able to rebuild. This is wrong. I'm proud to be here today to support the bills by Senator McGuire and Senator Dodd. And I'm proud to support the fire survivors who stand behind me and the thousands of people in Santa Rosa and Sonoma County who also are waiting for help from this legislature. No one buys an insurance policy to replace half of their home. While I support these bills today, we need insurance reform that goes further. We need insurance reform that doesn't allow a policy that only replaces half of your home to be sold. I urge the committee today to approve these bills and to move this recovery forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Corsi. At this time, we're happy to take questions from the media that are present, if there are any questions.
Going back to the days of Prop 103, you have an insurance industry that basically made these bills dead on arrival back in the late 1980s. What's to make anybody believe here that this industry, which rolls the risks, pays more money than anybody else to legislatures in terms of campaign contributions, is actually going to get through the legislature, even with a Democratic majority in both houses and a Democratic president? What makes you believe that will actually happen?
Well, we're going to put that to the test today. This is a fight. Both senators and I have alluded to the fact that these are very straightforward, very important, very necessary bills. They're part of a package of bills that we've worked on together to try to address a whole host of issues. And you're right, many of these are ideas that have been proposed before and defeated by the insurance industry. What's different this time is the enormity of the disaster that befell California. And I'm hopeful that the committee will be persuaded by that. When the committee hears the stories of the fire survivors behind me, when the committee hears the testimony of Senators Dodd and McGuire and others with regard to what people are experiencing, that they will be persuaded to surmount the special influence lobbying of the insurance industry. But that's the test we'll see today. Let me see if there's another question from another member of the media.
How will this work retroactively with policies that have been written and underwritten already? How is this going to change what's already been written?
Well, I'll let each senator talk specifically about retroactivity in their bills, but understand these are coverages that people have already paid for. So the argument that the insurers are making that somehow this will have some dramatic cost impact is simply without merit. These are things that people have paid for. They've paid for the coverages that Senator Dodd's bill will allow people to combine. They've paid for the contents coverage that Senator McGuire's bill will allow people to access without having to do an inventory. So let me ask each of the senators to address specifically the retroactivity provision in their bills.
Thank you, Mike McGuire. So I think there's twofold answer to that question. Number one, it will help those who have yet to settle, number one. 60% of North Bay homeowners have yet to settle their contents. A whopping 80% have yet to settle on their structure. And what we know, if we take a look at the Valley Fire as an example, we are going to be lucky to be able to get to half by December of this year who will be able to settle on structure. The way it will benefit those, let's just say an insurance company comes in at 50% on contents. We have some that have come in at 75%. Those individuals would be due what this new law proposes. And by the way, that's the right thing to do. It puts more money into the pockets of those who lost their homes, have to rebuild their lives, and candidly, it's going to help our economy grow. It's going to help our economy recover, because the quicker we put dollars into the pockets of those who lost everything, the quicker our community is going to be rebuilt. Mr. Dodd.
Yeah, Senator Bill Dodd. My bill's SB 894 will do similar things. It will guarantee 3 years of coverage for living expenses. Right now, candidly, it's not enough, because we know that these homes are not going to be built in 1 year or 2 years. So that would be something we're asking for retroactivity on. The other one, it would ensure policy renewals. That will be retroactive as well, so that somebody has a policy to cover their home for up to 2 years following a disaster. And then finally, it would allow a combination of different coverages, specifically, outbuildings, contents, and living expenses. They're paying insurance premiums on each and every one of those items, right now, and we think it's important to go back and allow those people to make claims so that they can rebuild their homes. Nobody is insisting that anybody should get rich off of these. What we're talking about is picking up coverages that are not there for them to rebuild their homes. Thank you.
One more question, yes.
Are you prepared to sue the insurance companies that, to the degree that you can under law, in order to enforce whatever the state law is? And just as importantly, are you willing to defend, if you have the resources, will you defend against a certain onslaught of lawsuits that will come against the department by the insurance industry so they don't have to pay?
Well, I've lost count of the number of lawsuits I've filed against insurers and the number of lawsuits I've defended against insurers. So my record's very clear. I am very diligent in enforcing California's consumer protection laws and very diligent in using every ounce of my authority to protect consumers. And when insurers sue me, we defend and we prevail. Any other questions from other members of the media?
The second part of my question is simply this. If this should not happen, if this is dead on arrival here, are you willing to support an initiative against an initiative on ballot that would require the insurance companies to do this and other things, which they clearly do not want to do, and are clearly making it clear to the legislature they don't want to do?
So everyone up here behind me is a fighter, and none of us are willing to throw in the towel. So we're going to go into that hearing and make our case, and then we're going to see what happens. My hope, as I believe is the hope of the senators and the fire survivors and the mayor, is that the Senate Insurance Committee will pass these bills, will not eviscerate them with amendments, and will listen to the compelling and terrible and devastating stories of the fire survivors and the need for these bills. So that concludes our conference. Thank you very much. And if there are members of the media that wish to speak to individual fire survivors, they will remain to allow you to do that. And we want to thank everyone for your kind attention. Thank you very, very much.